Ever notice how, like, even when you're not really using your phone, it's still kind of doing stuff?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like syncing photos or checking for updates,
Yeah,
all those little background operations, it makes you wonder, like, is that why my battery is always draining so fast?
right.
And I was thinking, our minds are kind of like that too, right? Like
Interesting.
there's this constant flow of thoughts and habits that are basically just wired in, and even like emotional stuff from the past that kind of lingers.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
And just like those silent apps on your phone, these unseen mental processes, they can really just drain our energy.
They totally can. And it's often without us even realizing it, right? We're just going about our day and then boom, we hit a wall and we're exhausted.
Yeah, exactly. And for this deep dive, we've been looking at a bunch of different stuff about this, like the neuroscience behind how habits work, and some tips on how we can shift our thinking, and even some deeper stuff on like self-awareness.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, and the goal is to pull out the most important insights, the ones that'll help us see those silent mental operations more clearly.
Yeah, because just becoming aware of them is huge.
Right. Awareness is the first step, like if you want to start guiding them.
Exactly. And, from what we've been reading, it turns out a crazy amount of our day-to-day lives just happens on autopilot.
Like, really?
Yeah, some researchers say that by the time we hit our 30s, something like 95% of what we think and do is driven by these ingrained patterns, our habits, emotional responses, those deep-seated beliefs.
95%? Wow, that's a lot. So, like, it's almost like we're not really choosing anymore.
Well, in a way, yeah. It's like we've got these default settings running in the background, and
Yeah.
we're not even consciously aware of them most of the time.
That's why. Okay, so think about your own day.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the automatic reach for your phone first thing in the morning,
Ugh, yeah, guilty.
the route you always take to the grocery store, even if there might be a better one.
Oh, that's so true. I do that all the time.
Or like how you react when someone criticizes your work. These things, they're so ingrained. It's like we're running these pre-programmed sequences, but we didn't hit play.
That's such a good analogy. And it really makes you question how much control we actually have, right?
Mhm.
Like, are we really the ones driving?
Right. I mean, if most of what we do is just habit, it's like, who's in charge here?
Well, and this ties into what we know about how habits form. They develop through these neurological loops.
Yeah.
There's a trigger, then the routine itself, and then a reward. And over time, these loops get super efficient, like they get etched into a part of our brain called the basal ganglia, and that lets them run without much effort.
Okay, so even if like 5% of me wants to go for a run or finally finish that project, I'm up against this other 95% that's just on autopilot.
Exactly. It can feel like a real uphill battle. But the important thing is that habits aren't random. They have a structure. Understanding this loop, the cue, routine, reward, that gives you a way to start changing them.
Okay, I like that. So it's not hopeless, right? We can learn to override the autopilot.
Right. We can definitely work with it. And that brings us to something really important. Those hidden drains on our mental energy.
Yeah, because it's not just the big decisions that wipe us out, right?
No, it's the constant little things too, like that voice in your head, that inner critic that's always putting you down.
Ugh, yeah, that one's the worst. Always focusing on what's wrong with you.
Yeah, that negative self-talk can drain so much mental energy. It's like a program running in the background, sapping your resources without you even realizing it.
And then there are those cognitive biases, right?
Oh yeah, those are tricky. Those are like mental shortcuts our brains take to process information faster, but they can lead us down the wrong path.
Like confirmation bias.
Exactly. That's where we tend to seek out information that confirms what we already believe, even if it's not true.
Right, and it actually takes more energy in the long run because we're not really seeing things objectively.
Totally. It's inefficient,
Yeah.
and it can keep us stuck in old patterns of thinking.
And what about overthinking? Especially when you're anxious.
Oh, that's a classic energy drain. It's like your brain's stuck on repeat, just analyzing and worrying, going over the same things again and again.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Like your mind just won't shut off.
And it affects the body, too. One of the things we read about really stuck with me. Someone was talking about how they realized they'd been breathing wrong their whole life, like taking shallow breaths instead of those deep, calming ones.
Oh, wow.
It was like their body was mirroring their anxious thoughts, always in this heightened state.
That's so interesting. It's like a physical manifestation of what's happening in your mind.
Exactly. It's a sign of that energy-consuming background process that we often don't even notice.
But here's the good news. Our brains aren't set in stone, right?
No, not at all. We've got this amazing thing called neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to rewire itself to form new connections.
So it's not fixed, it can change.
Absolutely. It's constantly adapting. And, we saw this really cool study from BBC News that showed how just 6 weeks of meditation can lead to actual physical changes in the brain.
Wow, so it's like if you intentionally direct your thoughts, you can literally reshape your brain.
Yeah, that's the idea. And it's about consistency, doing it over and over again.
Okay, so it's like building a new path. The more you walk it, the more defined it becomes.
Exactly. And the old paths, the ones you don't use anymore, they start to fade away.
So if we want to change our mental landscape, it's about creating new pathways, new habits.
Right. And one of the sources talked about this feed method, which is basically a way to consciously rewire your brain.
What's FEED stand for?
So it's focus, effort, effortlessness, and determination.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. So focus is about paying attention to what you're thinking and doing, really directing your mind. Effort is about actually practicing the new thought or behavior you want to develop. Effortlessness is about reaching a point where the new habit becomes more automatic, like second nature.
I like that. It's like you're working towards it feeling natural.
Exactly. And then determination is about sticking with it, even when it's hard.
Yeah, because change is hard, right? It takes time and effort.
It definitely does. But remember, we've got that basic principle. Cells that fire together, wire together.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So every time we think a thought or do something, we're strengthening those connections in the brain.
Exactly. So if you keep repeating the new pattern, those connections get stronger,
Yeah.
and the old, unhelpful ones get weaker.
And what about visualization? I've heard that can be helpful.
Yeah, mental rehearsal is powerful. One of the videos we watched talked about how vividly imagining yourself doing something can actually create the same neural pathways as actually doing it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right. It's like you're installing the software for success by just practicing in your mind.
That makes a lot of sense. And it kind of relates to this idea we read about focusing on your strengths instead of just trying to fix your weaknesses.
Absolutely. One of the articles suggested that focusing on developing your strengths can give you so much more momentum and motivation.
Yeah, I like that. It feels more positive.
Right. It's about building on what you're already good at.
Instead of getting bogged down in all the stuff you think you need to change.
Exactly. It's a much more energizing approach.
Speaking of habits, we were reading Rewire Your Brain, and it mentioned how once a habit becomes really ingrained, it's mostly processed by the left side of your brain.
Oh, interesting. And that's the side associated with routine tasks, right?
Exactly. Which then frees up the right side, which is the more creative side.
So basically, good habits can actually make you more creative.
Yeah, kind of. It frees up mental space for new ideas.
I love that. So it's not just about like being more efficient, it's about expanding your potential.
Right. And if we want to break bad habits, one of the things we read from Colorado State University was that it's all about changing the cues,
Cues. Well, what do you mean?
like the things that trigger the habit. So if you want to start journaling every day, put a journal by your bed. Or if you want to eat healthier, put a sticky note on your fridge reminding you to choose healthy snacks.
Oh, that's smart. It's like you're interrupting the automatic response.
Exactly. You're putting something new in the way.
I'm going to try that. And then there's the Kaizen method, remember?
Oh, yeah, that was cool. What was that again?
It's this Japanese idea of making small, gradual changes. Instead of trying to overhaul everything at once, you just make tiny adjustments over time.
Yeah, that feels a lot less overwhelming. And from what we read in Lifehack, it's actually more sustainable.
Right. Because lasting change takes time. You have to be patient with yourself.
And consistent.
Totally. There will be...
To awareness and intention. Like you have to actually pay attention to what's going on in your mind and make a conscious effort to change it.
Yeah, that's what the Wikipedia page on personal development talked about, right?
Exactly. Self-awareness is key.
And someone on the self-improvement subreddit, they brought up this idea of slowness as a form of self-respect.
Slowness. That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, they were talking about how when we slow down, we're signaling safety to our nervous system.
Which makes sense, right? Because a lot of those negative background processes, they come from feeling rushed and stressed.
Exactly. So sometimes doing less, but with more intention, can actually be more productive.
That's so counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
And another thing that came up in that thread was how to deal with negative beliefs.
Oh, yeah, like those deep-seated beliefs that we have about ourselves.
Right. They were saying that you have to actively challenge those beliefs.
So, like, question them and look for evidence that contradicts them.
Exactly. And then try to reframe them in a more positive way.
It's like you're rewriting the code of your mind.
Exactly. Because those beliefs, they really do shape our reality.
But our internal world isn't separate from the external world, right?
No, not at all. They influence each other all the time.
Like, unhealthy relationships can have a huge impact on our mental state. That's something Rewire Your Brain talked about.
Yeah, and on the flip side, having supported relationships can be like medicine. That's the idea behind social medicine.
Right, because connection is so important.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just about feeling good. It actually affects things like your blood pressure and stress levels.
So, like, loneliness can actually make you sick.
Yeah, studies have shown that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then there's that feeling of not being enough that we all struggle with sometimes.
Oh, yeah, that one's tough. And the Reddit thread talked about how a lot of that comes from comparing ourselves to others.
Which is like a natural human thing to do, right?
It is, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with images of other people's seemingly perfect lives.
Right. It's hard not to compare.
But it can be so damaging. It feeds those negative background processes of self-doubt and insecurity.
So ultimately, self-improvement is about understanding these background processes and learning to work with them.
That's what it's all about.
And it's a journey, right? Not a destination.
Exactly. It's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And as that blog from the Illinois Leadership Center said, it's about trying new things and taking risks to become a better version of yourself.
And Wikipedia's entry on personal development talked about how real growth comes from meaningful accomplishments, not just from chasing pleasure.
Right. It's about living a life that's true to yourself, that's aligned with your values.
And that takes effort and commitment.
It does. But the payoff is huge.
So to wrap things up, it's clear that so much of what affects our energy and well-being happens beneath the surface in these unseen mental processes.
It's like the operating system of our minds.
Exactly. But the good news is we can become aware of these processes and start to consciously shape them.
We can take control.
And that's really empowering. So as we end this deep dive, we want to leave you with this question.
I like it. A question to ponder.
What's running in the background for you that you haven't noticed?
Yeah, what's going on beneath the surface?
And maybe exploring some of the things we talked about today will help you find some answers.
I think it will. It's definitely a journey worth taking.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I always learn so much from these deep dives.
Me too. It's always eye-opening.
And to everyone listening, keep exploring those background processes. You never know what you might discover.
Definitely. The mind is an amazing thing.